It's a moment to prepare itself. Done. Okay. So, oh, hello everybody. I think we are now live on YouTube. Let me just, I think I could hear my voice repeating on itself for some reason. So hang on, let me just sort that one out. That on, yeah, there we go. Right, okay, hello everybody. We are now live on YouTube. I'm here with Zoe, who's going to be, this is technically a Facebook Live, but we're doing it on YouTube now because Facebook Live is not working. So I'm just going to pop this into the Coffee and Collabs group as well, so you can watch it there. Just bear with me while I do some tapping away. And hopefully we should be all live. Hello, Zoe. Welcome to the not Facebook Live, shall we call them. So this is the Coffee and Collabs. So this is an opportunity for us to share different business owners, celebrate who they are. And obviously Coffee and Collabs has always been set up to help each other grow audiences together, which is why I do these live sessions, because I like to get to know different business owners, what they do, what makes them tick. And again, share some really useful tips on how they can help other people as well. So if you have any questions, come join us over on YouTube. You can ask questions in the chat there or put them into the comments in the Facebook Live. And if we don't get to answer them live on this session, we can come back to them later on in the day. So we are going to be talking a little bit behind the scenes of Zoe's business. So rather than me introduce Zoe properly, I'm going to let Zoe introduce herself because that will be so much more accurate than what I will say.
Sounds fair. The question is how much do you want me to introduce? Do you want me to go talk about me, talk about the business? How much do you want me to share?
I'll have a bit. Let's have a bit about both. Let's talk about sort of a little bit about you, maybe a couple of fun tips, as well as when did you start your first business and why?
Okay, so a little bit about me first. So I'm, aside from running the business, I'm also a mum, although he's 22 now. So it feels like the mumming is very different to how it's been over the years. It's definitely much easier now, that's for sure. So I've got a son who's 22. He works in as a SEND support, but also plays basketball. So those who know or follow me will see a lot of basketball content on my timeline. I've never played, but I have been involved in the basketball world for about 10 years now. So when I'm not working, and actually it's a really good way to make me not work, I'm involved with basketball. So I sponsor the local women's team and also sit on the bench with the team helping with mindset and confidence. So a bit of work related in there, but primarily there to sponsor. And I'm a volunteer with the men's team as well. So over the years, I've driven the minibus, done lots of different jobs, but I help out on game day and also cook for the team when they've got away games. So lots of cooking, lots of basketball, and generally that's what you'll see. Other than me going to the gym, that's pretty much what you'll see outside of the work stuff. So business-wise, I've been self-employed since 2017. I worked for the police for 20 years, started at 18, and then through different roles. Actually, out of the 20 years, nearly 15 of those years were in leadership. And then my role was made redundant back in 2017. So took all of the best bits of the jobs that I'd done over the years, decided to set up a business, coaching, training, and created Phoenix. So I've been coaching, training for just over 7 years now, predominantly leadership. And then over the last few years, it's been a lot of lifestyle and well-being, but I think that's just representative of where the world is and has been during COVID and everything else. Had a lot of well-being kind of work come through, and then this year niched into supporting other people that are from a public sector background or even still in the public sector who want to run their own business. So working with people whilst they're still employed, helping them to build their business so it gets to that point where they feel confident enough to, if that is ever such a thing, are you ever confident enough? Would you just make that decision? But helping them and supporting them to build their business and then step into self-employment. So that's me in a nutshell.
I mean, you must see quite a lot of overlap from the basketball side of your life and like helping people move out of their kind of public sector roles and into that. There must be huge amounts you can learn from both sides, really, that you can take forward.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on in sport that is also very transferable into the business world. I think there's a lot of pro athletes that also have side hustles, and in another world, I would love to work with them as a niche of people. However, there's a lot more challenges around working with pro athletes, which I won't go into because it will sound very disrespectful, but they have a very different set of priorities and how they show up is very different. And I love the mindset and the discipline of public sector people. And I know we talked about this when you came on my podcast as a guest. You know, there's a certain mindset of people who've worked in the public sector and how they show up in business really works for me in terms of how I like to work. So I did bounce the idea around for a little while to think maybe I could work with pro athletes, and I probably will because of the number of connections that I have. But to niche into that world, I think would probably be quite challenging. And so I decided that actually public sector staff was probably a better niche and a better fit for me and my skill set and how I like to work with people.
Absolutely. It's just interesting the kind of different backgrounds and how they come together. I think one of the things we talked about when we did the podcast together, which I really enjoy coming on your podcast. So if anyone hasn't listened to it yet, do go give Zoe's podcast a listen. It's really, really useful, even if you're not in public sector or that's not your background. There's so much useful information on there. I think one of the mindset things that, because I've been public sector and I've been charity non-profit, and the biggest mindset thing for me it's that charging for my time, that pricing, being able to feel like being paid because you're so used to doing stuff for basically nothing and used to working with very little budgets as well. And you're having to create stuff out of nothing. And that shift from moving away and having your own business and actually having to be perfectly okay with earning money in a different way is such a, I think one of the hardest things I've had to deal with.
And it's it's very, very typical, and it's not specific to any part of the public sector. I mean, what do we all hear ourselves say? Oh, well, we don't do this for the money. You know, it's almost part of our identity. You know, we're good people. We help people because we're good people. And then when you come into business and you're helping people, especially if you're in the service industry and you want to provide a good service or you want to help and support people, charging money for that is really uncomfortable. But I think that and the visibility, you know, we're very good at, or not so good at being visible. We're very good at being invisible. We've been very good at not talking about what we do and reading the room before you mention who you work for and all of those things. So I think there's lots of things that add additional challenges on top of those who are coming out of the private sector. You know, the money mindset, the visibility, confidence in and creating your own brand is very new, let alone the sales and marketing and all of those other things that we have to learn how to do, because the public sector doesn't run like a business. So you don't hear about those things, you don't learn about those things because you're, you know, the majority, certainly for me in the police, it's about reducing demand. It's about making sure people don't come back, you know, and trying to prevent people coming to you. And you work with who you work with. So you don't have a niche, you might have specialisms, but you don't choose who you work with. It gets allocated to you. So very, very different.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about maybe some of your biggest successes you've seen so far in your business. So we've been talking about, obviously we talked about some of the challenges coming in or moving away from public sector or roles where you're predominantly giving your time in honor of doing something good. Doesn't mean we don't do that in business, but it's just a different reframing of your mind. But obviously, you've had a lot of experience over the years of different businesses. So tell us about some of your kind of key moments where your successes have been.
Well, I mean, my own personal successes, I think there's been lots in there. And I think now being able to use what I've learned over the years and, all of the things that I've invested in to learn and to grow, as well as my own experiences, and then being able to support individuals with that, with their own businesses has been probably the biggest learning curve as well, because it is so different. And people ask me, why would you not niche to the police and or people into one type of business? But I get bored really easily. I need that variety. So whilst I wanted to be more focused around a niche, I actually enjoy working with people that have got very different businesses. So it's not a roadmap or a blueprint that everybody applies. So that means I need to get to know the individual, and need to get to know their business. And that's what I really enjoying, in feeling like you're almost rolling up your sleeves to a point and working with them on their business. But it's not just about the business strategy, it's about working with them on their personal development as well, because they're on such a big journey that I think there's a lot to be said at the moment. The ones that have come into my membership, they're being part of that journey and seeing them getting closer to that point where they feel like they're going to be ready to hand their notice in, and they're starting to create timelines around that now. But you're also just seeing their confidence grow and seeing them put offers out, seeing them starting to do their Facebook lives. And I think there's a lot of reward in that, even though it's somebody else's success. But I think my
Oh yeah.
personal success was going out to Milan this year and speaking. So I think there's been lots of really, really good stuff. But I think when it got to June and, being flown out to Milan for the weekend to deliver a workshop out there, I was like, yeah, this is good. This is some good stuff. This is not policing anymore. It's a very, very different world now, which has been good.
Oh, what an incredible experience. And what a great city to go to as
I
well. I mean,
know, I'm definitely going back. I was walking around and thinking, yeah, definitely coming back here.
yeah, I love that. And I think in some ways when we've talked before, and the reason we're quite similar in many ways is because likewise I'm about biggest generalist you can get. But I like seeing, I think actually if I niched it would have similar to what you're saying is I get to see more of what goes on across different industries, which are such transferable skills for other people. I learn far more by seeing much more variety. But I also think it's my wins isn't necessarily my own kind of wins. It's seeing other people win. For me,
Yeah.
that just is so much, so much more rewarding. And that for me is the win. Other people winning is 100% a win. So I completely agree with that. Well, going on the flip side then, because we all know that business is a roller coaster. So we often see on social media the shiny side of business, but what we don't always see is some of the reality. So what have been maybe some of your biggest challenges, and what have maybe you've learned from that and being able to take forward? Because just to also iterate for people that are listening, when you have challenges in business, they aren't failures, they're just a way of moving forward. So we reframe that to say that sometimes things that don't work are your biggest learnings and will help you on your biggest success journey. So what have you been maybe some of your maybe areas where you think that's been a bit challenging for me?
I think the biggest challenge for me was when I first came out of the police. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I kind of went in, I did go into this really naively. And I think in hindsight, that was probably a gift in itself, because I didn't know how much I didn't know. So I kind of blissfully unaware, which is a bit of a common theme for me, really, is that I just kind of wander into it. I made the decision, I'm going to start a business, and I really didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what was involved. So I think I think in hindsight, that naivety was probably a bit of a gift, because there wasn't the overwhelm, there wasn't the stress. I wasn't worried about all of the things that I wasn't doing, because I didn't know I was supposed to be doing them. So I just kind of rolled into it and learned as I went along. And that, although it's definitely not ideal, and it's probably something now, one of the reasons why I've set up the membership and the Facebook group is to try and support people at those really early stages to get those fundamentals in place really early on, because I just didn't know. So it meant for me, when I did start to learn all of those things and meet people that started talking about roadmaps and strategies, and I was like, I don't do any of that. And they're like, but you've had a profitable, successful business without that. So imagine how much more success there could be with those fundamentals in place. So it's probably shaped, that again, the flip side is that it's shaped how I now like to work with people and getting those things in place. That's definitely been one of the challenges. I think, again, we've talked about this in the public sector, people do what they say they're going to do. So when somebody says, this is what's going to happen, it happens, because there's a big chain of events and other people that are involved in it. And certainly from in my world and a lot of the departments that I worked in, it was life or death. If you didn't, potentially, it was high risk. If you didn't do what you said you were going to do, lots of other things potentially could happen. So I found that really challenging in terms, like the first couple of years, you have conversations with people and they'd be like, oh yeah, we'll do this, and I'll do this, and this will be the contract, and this is what we'll pay you, and then you'd find out later on, oh, okay, that's not now what's happening. And so I think I learned that the hard way with almost the first couple of contracts that I had, where just people just didn't do what they said they were going to do, or they were kind of changing things towards the end. So I learned, again, just to make sure terms and conditions and contracts and getting everything written down, but also not always taking things at face value. Somebody can sit in front of you and get really excited. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. So I think I'm probably a little bit more wary about that now. Whereas I remember in the early days, I used to get so excited. We're like, oh, I spoke to this company and they're really excited and it's going to do this, this, and this. And then you just never hear from them again, which would never happen in public sector. They would just tell you straight up, okay, no, this isn't going to happen. We don't have the resource. We don't have the budget, or we're not interested. They wouldn't kind of lead you down this little path. So again, just those things. I was 18 when I started working for the police. I didn't know any different. So it's almost like this whole world existed, where people don't necessarily, is it honesty? Is it integrity? Is it, what do they call it, salesman's license? I don't know, but it's a very different world out there, and it has taken a little while to adjust to that, I think. So I think, again, that's one of the things now that I'm really careful and make a point of sharing with people that are starting out, of like, okay, this is where it's different. This is what you need to know stepping into it.
Yeah, and I guess that you're so used to heavily processes and systems in place constantly, and having that freedom on when you're on the inside of being in a process-driven place, the freedom looks wonderful. But the reality, I often said it was like when I first started to learn to ride a motorbike. It's quite a few years ago now. The thing that freaked me out was I didn't have a seatbelt on. It's stupid. I was like, I haven't got a seatbelt. I mean, you honestly even want a seatbelt on a motorbike, but it's the same thing when you're kind of going out of that. I've got the freedom to do what I want, but it's also that flip side of I've got the freedom to do what I want, and I need to figure out how to do it now.
Yeah. How does it all work when there isn't a process, a policy, a procedure, a legislation, a law, or 5 levels of hierarchy above you telling you this is how it needs to be done? When it is just you sitting there and planning for the year ahead, and you think, right, what am I going to do? What's going to generate income? What's going to build my audience? What's going to get me visible? What do I want to do? And who asks you what you want to do? And how do you want to spend your time? And what hours do you want to work? And you're sat there with a blank sheet of paper, and it's like, ooh, okay, then now there's nobody to ask and there's nobody to tell me. So it's a big shift.
Oh, but it's it's a great learning curve though. I think in some ways a bit similar to you. When I first went into my first business, I had absolutely no Scooby-Doo as to what I was doing. But I went in feeling like I was the rookie. So my mind was just like a sponge for information. I didn't have the limiting beliefs. In some ways, coming into this business and doing this now, I've had to push away a lot of those barriers. So it's been a really interesting. So I completely hear you on that. So we talked a bit about where you started your business and who you help. So if you're thinking about your kind of key audience, what would be some of your three of your top tips if they were thinking about leaving the public sector? What would be your top tips to give them?
So I think the first thing I always say to people is you are starting with a blank sheet of paper. So you don't need to find or go into a business that replicates what you've done in the public sector. There's this big freedom of choice there of what is it you're passionate about? What is it that you feel that sense of purpose to do? Making sure that your business aligns with your values and meets your needs is really important. And I think a lot of people look at, the business plan of the income streams and the touch points in your customer journey, and they're all very, very important. But there's a step in front of that of who are you? What do you want to spend your days doing? What are you passionate about? What do you feel a sense of purpose for? What needs need to be met? What's negotiable? What's not negotiable? All of these personal things need to be worked out first, and then you can see what business works around that. And you might be driven by, income generation, or you might actually be driven by something else. For me, I need to earn a certain amount. I want a profitable and successful business, but I also want to be able to travel 2/3 of the year and work 20 hours a week eventually. So how do you create a business that supports that longer term? So I think that's always the first step. And I think a lot of people skip past that, not because they're intentionally skipping past that, just because they don't know how important that is. I think the second thing I would say is you will have a limited amount of time. So if you are still working in a 9 to 5, or you've got shift work, you've probably also got some care responsibilities as well. So you probably have a very small window of time to spend on your business. So one of the things that I talk about with the membership is, and I have done in wider groups as well, is gold, silver, and bronze. So if you think about what's the minimum you need to do to keep the momentum going, so to keep your business moving forward, what's the minimum you need to do? That's your bronze. What's the kind of thing you would like to be able to do? Like on an average day, on a really good day, what would you like to be able to do to work on your business? That's your silver. And then your gold is when you've got, maybe a day off, or you've got some annual leave, or like now with, a Christmas and New Year holiday coming up, and perhaps you've got a slightly slower pace. What else do you want to do to kind of give it that push forward? And I think that's the thing, is not getting caught up in what you feel like you have to do, but actually what have you got capacity to do? And if you've only got half an hour or an hour every day to work on your business, what are the priority tasks that are going to keep the business going and move that needle of your business forward? And if you just do that one thing every day, then that will keep that momentum going without creating that extra stress. Sometimes I call it bronze, silver, and gold. Sometimes I call it more like the slow lane, the middle lane, and the fast lane of the motorway. But as somebody very kindly pointed out, there's a lot of middle lane hoggers, and we want to make sure that people are using the lanes as they should be used. But I think those are probably the two things: get ahead of the game, work out what it is that you want, what's important to you, and then work out that capacity and what are your priority tasks that are going to help you to keep the needle of the business moving.
Yeah, great tips. And well, actually, as it happens, if people are thinking of coming out the public sector, you've got something coming up this very weekend that might be useful.
As it happens, yes.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Do you see how I segued that? That was quite smooth of me, actually. It doesn't happen very often.
Love it. So on Saturday, which is the 7th of December, for those of you watching back, on Saturday, the 7th of December, I am doing the first summit. So this will be the winter summit, because I do have plans for a spring summit. It's very difficult with a Bristolian accent to say that without going summit. So we've got a winter summit coming up on Saturday. So got some amazing speakers, Naomi included, and other people that will be familiar to you. I have tried to select people with a public sector background because you get it, you'll get the audience and where they're coming from. However, I would say that actually all of the speakers would be very well suited to anybody in business. So it's aimed at my audience, but actually would be perfect for any business owner, especially those of you that are sort of starting out or in that first year, I would say. So you're talking about strategy for visibility, building your audience. Kirsty Bartholomew's coming in and talking about emails and email planning. Helen Taylor Brimson's talking about how our brain and mindset works and how we can tap into that. Nick Elston, who I do a lot of work with, who's a professional speaker, is going to talk about finding your voice and being able to talk like these, to being able to do videos, do lives, being able to represent your brand. And Charlotte Phillips-Lynn is coming in to talk about how we can be more inclusive for our audiences. So how we can be more inclusive around language and how we talk about things, how we approach things. So, as I always say, I don't think you can ever know enough on any of these topics. And so I'm looking forward to learning more as well. I'll be scribbling my notes down with all the speakers, but it's free to attend. So you can come to any of the sessions live for free, or there is the option to get the recordings for £29. And also a big thanks to the Coffee and Collabs group, because lots of people have put some things forward for the VIP bundle, which is £99. So there's got to be easily over a grand's worth of CPD and content and resources in there. So it's pretty much sets people up for the year almost in terms of learning. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's the first one I've done. I've tried to keep it simple. It is about just giving people the information that's going to help them. So I'm very grateful to you and others for either giving your time as a speaker or giving resources to go into the bundles. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Oh, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm actually going to be in Edinburgh when I'm doing the actual talk. But I was like, we were planning to go away, and I'm like, no, I'm going to be doing this. So, this is coming before my trip. Yeah, so yeah, but absolutely. I mean, this is, again, I think this is partly leads into why Coffee and Collabs is great, because being able to collaborate with people, making real connections and helping each other is so much more rewarding. So this summit's going to be, even if you're not public sector, I mean, there are some incredible people. It's free. I mean, it's free. It's daft not to just sign up and come along. Really, it's a bit of a no-brainer for me. But come and enjoy. It's on Saturday. It'll be a great chance to actually listen to some different people from a multiple variety of backgrounds. So it's going to be really, really fascinating day. So I am absolutely looking forward to it. My last question for you is, obviously this is Coffee and Collabs, and we've already talked about one pretty epic collaboration, but if people want to collaborate with you or got different ideas, what kind of collaborations are you open to, and who are you, what are you open for? Are you open for collaborations? What sort of things do you have on offer?
Always. I love pairing up with people to deliver on things, because I think everybody brings something different, whether it's expertise or just a different dynamic to the mix. I love collaborating. So from what I can offer to others in the group, I've got, 7 years worth of content in terms of resources and workshops, anything around resilience, confidence, mindset. That's been my bag for the last 7 years. I can apply it to life, leadership, business, you name it. So if you've got an audience that is struggling with that, I'm more than happy to come in and do either live workshops or pre-recorded stuff. In terms of opportunities for other people, the winter summit is now sorted, but as I said, there will be a spring summit next year. So if you're interested in speaking or providing resources, pop me a message. I'd love to hear from you. I also have an in-person event in January, which I'll be looking for sponsorship for. So there'll be some opportunities for you to promote your business there. So that I'm sorting out at the moment, and we'll put some information into the group. And the third thing is that the membership that I've got will be looking for some expert speakers to come in and do some workshops in a very small group capacity. So if anybody would like to be involved in that, I would love to hear from you. So yeah, all of those opportunities, and I'm more than happy to swap and come in and do something for your group as well. Just let me know.
Amazing. Finally, where can people find you if they want to follow up with you?
So I think pretty much all of my socials are under my name, so zoethompson.uk, and the email address is support@zoethompson.uk. But pop me a message, and yeah, I'd be happy to have a chat and see what opportunities are out there. Good.
Amazing. Zoe, thank you very much. All of those links and details of the summit will be going into the chat and on the YouTube live descriptions as well, which I'll pop on my blog later on this week. So if you've missed this and you can't join live and you have any questions for Zoe, feel free to write it in the comments in the Facebook group or pop on a comment on the YouTube and we will get back to you. Zoe, thank you ever so much. I've really enjoyed our session. And if you want more of both of us today, come on at 7 p.m. tonight. We're on Instagram, if I'm right.
Yeah, and we're going to swap places. So I'll be asking Naomi the questions, but it will be talking about the summit and what Naomi's talk will be on. So yeah, come and join us over on Instagram at 7.
Amazing. Thank you ever so much, Zoe. And thank you everyone for tuning